Welcome back to Season 4 of Tequila Chats. Our first guest is the incredible Kamini Lane. Kamini is the president and CEO of Coldwell Realty. She is a true powerhouse in real estate leadership. She is internationally recognized for her visionary impact on this industry. She leads Coldwell with over 55,000 agents across 600 offices in 55 plus markets nationwide. She has been recognized as a woman of influence and is the Vanguard Award winner by Housing Wire. Kamini, thank you very much for taking the time to be in Tequila Chats. Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
It's been a little bit of a process to get together, with the difference in the two sides of the country, but finally we did it. And so again, thank you very much.
We did it, and we're here in this beautiful location.
I know. Can you believe this? Beautiful and fantastic weather. Yes, absolutely. So you've seen Tequila Chats. As you know, it's a conversation about how very successful people get to that point in their lives, particularly in their business. We know, and it is no secret, that you're a powerhouse, not just in real estate, but when it comes to brand and communications, marketing, all that entire kind of arena. I'm always very interested in this conversation, trying to figure out where that drive comes from and what early influences were in place for you to get to this moment. And so where does Kamini come from in terms of those early, years? And are there any influences that you identify right now as a successful adult that you think help you define who you are right now and how do you do your business and the direction of your career?
Definitely, yeah. So it's my parents. I mean, probably a lot of people say this, but I grew up with my parents, were born and raised in India and came to the US. My dad came in the late 60s. My mom came in the mid 70s after they got married. And education was always a focus.
Yes.
Both my parents have advanced degrees, and there was sort of always an expectation that you had to focus, do well in school, and achieve.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
And my mom in particular, when I was very little, she just kind of instilled this idea in me that I had to do more. And I remember when I was in kindergarten, she had me placed in second grade math and first grade English.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
she really was very committed to this. Yes.
very committed. And so, there's like 6-year-old Kamini walking into the second grade classroom to do math and, in the first grade classroom to do English. So at a very, very early age, there was this expectation that I was going to do more, and that just sort of being at level wasn't fulfilling my potential.
Yes.
And my mom was the one who really kind of guided that, and I wouldn't say she pushed it, because I never felt pressure. I never felt stressed by it. I just felt like that was the way that it was.
Well, she was providing that motivation to you to get those things. Yes. And the opportunities. That's interesting too. Yes.
And my dad was the one who really instilled in me this idea that if you can, you should.
Huh.
Right. So
I love
that. He saw that I was able to do math at a higher grade, or read at an advanced level, or whatever it is, and he really instilled this very intrinsic sense in me that if you can do more, you should do more. That really carried with me throughout my whole life, that I always felt like whether it was in education or whether it was from a career perspective, I should do the most that I could. And I think that's been really formative for me.
What seems very sweet about what you're saying is that it's almost like we said, they were not pushing you, but they were listening to you, and they were listening to where you were at that point in your life and what they saw maybe as interest, and they put these opportunities in front of you, and that seems to me very generous and very lovely on their part.
Very committed also, to really figuring out where it was that I actually could excel, and making sure that those were the opportunities. I mean, just a really concrete example, I've never been that great at science. And so there was never any effort to say, hey, you need to go take, college level science classes. It was really like, I loved English, I loved reading, I loved writing. I thought I would be a writer, actually. And I was always very good at math. And so those were the things that they said, okay, you can, so you should.
Yes. I have a similar story. My family is a family of musicians, and I had no gifts for music. I'm just like the worst. They try to get me to play piano or learn to play piano, saxophone, guitar, violin, none of that stuff. But they figure out that I'm sure you won't be surprised by this, but that acting was kind of like my thing. You know, I guess I was like a little ham since I was very little. And so they provided me these opportunities to really kind of like jump into acting as something that I loved and that was very formative. And I feel like that has been, in some ways, very defining of how I even do real estate. Yeah. Those very early years of acting, of being in the arts, have been really fundamental in how I see what I do and how I approach the work that I do in the business and with my clients.
The common thread is, I think, you know, when you're at a very early age, when someone who you trust believes in you and knows that you can achieve and accomplish and really excel, that I think that kind of forms something in your soul where you think, I can do this. And I, you know, for me anyway, that also came with less of a fear of risk and failure, because I felt like, you know, whatever it is, I'll figure it out.
Yes, and you were in line of something that you loved, which is really, really important. But it seems to me, just looking at your career, that it has been defined by fashion and luxury. How do you find that, you know, that part of business? Where does the fashion and that relationship to luxury come from in your business?
Well, you know, I always loved fashion. You know, from the time that I was in high school, I grew up in Los Angeles, in a suburb of Los Angeles, and you know, my girlfriends and I would go shopping and just devise these crazy outfits, and I liked expressing myself through fashion. So I always knew that it was something that I had a passion for. Never really thought that I would go into fashion, meaning I didn't want to be a designer or anything on the creative side. But when I was a couple of years out of college, I got the opportunity to go work for eBay. And I was part of the fashion category management team. So then I was in that world, but it was this amazing combination of a tech company and then a fashion focus. And within that fashion focus, I ran the accessories category, which was predominantly designer handbags.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for 3 years.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and then from there I went to business school. But I loved the idea that luxury is an experience, not a price point.
Yes, exactly. That's my belief.
And that's exactly the way you run your business, right? It is not about whether or not somebody is buying a $1 million condo or a $10 million home. It's the experience.
The experience that they get. Them. Yes, exactly.
And I think that to me was really interesting very early in my career, realizing, you know, hey, these people are buying a luxury good. They're buying it on eBay, but they still expect something that feels really special. And how does that carry through to whatever it is that you're providing? Any kind of customer.
It's really interesting because, again, that experiential part I think gets lost sometimes on the service provision. And I think that in real estate in particular, because there is a big part of what we do that is transactional. I think that component of the experience gets lost in translation, or sometimes there is not a full grasp. And so to me that has been paramount of what I'm doing, and it's that consistency on what we do to, you know, the service that we provide to all of our clients regardless of that price point. But it's also interesting because it creates, and I'm sure that you could speak about this in depth because of your branding experience, it creates that kind of like what is the word that I'm trying to find? They become your clients for life. And they grow with you, and it's a relationship that becomes a much more of an emotional relationship versus being just a transactional relationship.
And in real estate, I always tell people, don't focus on the transaction, focus on the relationship. And if you do that, the transaction will come, right? That's inevitable in the business.
It is.
Deals will close. And they will close with you if you have spent all of your energy really harnessing and nurturing the relationship.
You know, something that I found in my practice is that the more challenging the market is, the more I get referrals or business from people that are in my sphere, because they feel like they need to support you at that point. And so it's a very interesting thing to see that relationship between that emotionality and that relationship in business.
And because that's where the trust comes in, I think. When things are difficult, people really need to lean into those that they trust. It's not because it's harder, right? And so you need to make that leap of faith that the person that you are entrusting with your biggest asset has the skills necessary and cares for you enough that they're going to shepherd you through this transaction in a more difficult environment, right? Because, back in 2021, when homes were flying off the shelves, it wasn't as difficult.
Yes.
So that relationship became more shallow, I think. And now it is so much deeper because, you're going to guide a buyer through multiple failed transactions.
Yes,
right?
in many ways, yes.
You're going to guide a seller through things falling out of escrow, and you need to have that connectivity.
Yes, no, that is very true. So let's talk about real estate. So I'm not going to mention some of the competitors that you worked for in the past.
Yeah.
But real estate, did you find real estate or did it find you?
It found me.
It found you. Which way?
Yeah,
Tell us the story.
That's such a great way to put it. So I was working in fashion. I was the chief marketing officer of a fashion technology company. Amazing job, amazing experience. I was having the time of my life. But I did have that little inkling that I was maybe ready for like a new challenge, right? Something different. And a real estate company that was a new entrant at that time was really focused on getting people who had tech experience, right? So it was this idea of a real estate technology company, and they were hiring people from Facebook and Google and whatever. And I had a tech background.
Yes.
And I also had a luxury background, I had a marketing background. So they recruited me over. And it took me about a year, actually, before I finally caved and left my job in fashion. But I came over, and what I quickly realized is that despite kind of the way that company was focused, it wasn't about technology. Real estate's about people.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm a people person.
Yes.
I love forming relationships. I really love understanding what drives people, and I love understanding how I can be of use. And once I realized that is really what my job at that time was all about, I was hooked.
Yes.
And so that was the beginning of my career in real estate.
So from that perspective of real estate and technology, what do you think the future of real estate is in terms of all of these emerging technologies, things like AI, for example, coming into play? How do you see those things kind of like shifting and changing how the business is done?
Yes.
And in which ways you think that business is going to look different?
At the end of the day, real estate is a relationship business. It's a human business. It's a people business. So I don't believe that technology will ever replace the real estate agent. But there are many, many things that agents do that are highly manual and highly rote.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And time-consuming, terribly time-consuming.
And so repetitive, right? The same things that you do over and over and over and over again. And that's where AI comes in. Because AI makes people more efficient.
Yes.
And the more that you train yourself to train AI, the more efficient you get. So it's this really nice virtuous cycle, actually.
Yeah.
And I don't think that AI is going to replace people ever, but I think people who are proficient in AI will replace people who are not. And it really is just a simple sort of calculus of how are you using your time. And I really love the term zone of genius. I think the point of artificial intelligence is to do the things that are not actually worth your time so that you stay in your zone of genius.
I love that. So I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and it's this idea that everyone's zone of genius is a little bit different, right?
Yes, of course.
Some people are just master negotiators.
Yes.
Some people are really just amazing at creating lifelong relationships. Whatever it is, it's that human element that you should be focusing 95% of your energy on. And that's where technology comes in to unleash you to stay in your zone of genius.
I love that, actually. I've never heard that. But I do think that is applicable, and tell me if you agree or disagree, to other technologies and to other tools. Like, for example, social media is a tool that is very similar in that sense, that you're able to articulate your story on your own terms.
Yes.
And so it's almost like I was talking to somebody yesterday, you're doing your own editorial in some ways, in a way that maybe we didn't have an opportunity to do in the past. And
Absolutely.
I think those are totally game-changing technologies that have shifted the business. At least for me, has been just a huge shift on how I do it.
Absolutely, and it is about becoming fluent in those pieces of technology that you know can help you tell your story, right? which, I think you guys have done so well, and the reach that you get, for people all over the world who know who you are, and more than just who you are, but through social media understand a little bit of what you represent.
Yes, of course. And the thing with those technologies is that they kind of like they become normalized. And so things like social media, as we know, it's a form of communication, just like text is. Absolutely. Or an email or whatever it is. And now we are really seeing the return on investment. Like now, I'm really seeing how effective it is in terms of business generation and business procurement. And what is interesting about social media in particular is that I'm seeing it, all of the leads that we are getting, pretty much, I would say 90% of the leads that we're getting through social media are in that luxury market segment. Yeah. Which is really, and may have to do with the visual nature of it, particularly Instagram. But it's been eye-opening, and
I think a lot of it is about the fact that you have a brand.
Yeah.
And through social media, you have a platform to curate and distribute that brand, and particularly in the luxury space, clients want to be associated with the brand that they think represents the type of property that they're trying to buy or sell. And so brand is more important in the luxury space. And you see that, with fashion, obviously, but with cars, I mean, anything in the luxury brand, right? Yeah. In the luxury space, brand plays such an important role. And social media, if you do it effectively, is a fantastic way to build your brand.
Yeah. So with your long history on brand and marketing and communications, if you look back at your business history, can you see like a tipping point in your career? Is there a point in which you were doing something and suddenly you feel like things change and you were now being able to move into the next level of your business?
I really think that actually came when I took the job as president and CEO of Coldwell Banker Realty. When I took this role, it was my first position as CEO. I had been president of a company in the past, but my first time being the CEO, and the first time that I was really responsible for having my own vision for what the brand and the business should be, and then bringing that to life.
Yeah.
Not that I was responsible for bringing it to life on my own, but utilizing the team and really harnessing everybody around one common vision and purpose. And I think that was, such an incredible inflection point for me to say, okay, this is on me now.
Yes.
I need to be the one to do the work to understand where we've been, where we are now, and then really have a strong sense of where we're going and validate that that's the right direction, right? Make sure that that's something that resonates with agents, that resonates with leaders, that ultimately resonates with clients, that's going to enable our agents to be more successful, and then bring that to life and make it happen.
So how do you materialize vision? Like, because how do you make vision happen?
I think, so first of all, I don't really know the answer to that. I'll just,
do it.
Well, I think it's very different for everyone, and I think a lot of it.
In your experience, how do you feel like?
I think a lot of it just depends on kind of the way that you process information, right? For me, the way that I process is ingesting a lot of information and then just sitting with it, and it's like I can imagine the wheels in my head spinning almost, and a thought starts to form about what the answer might be. And it really does, it's this combination of art and science, I think, because it starts with a ton of data, a ton of fact, a ton of input, a ton of feedback, but then it's not like I'm, putting all of that into a spreadsheet and creating a ton of PowerPoint presentations, and it's all of that somehow, gets processed.
You're processing
through
that information.
And really, and then I start to kind of manifest a vision of what the answer might be, and validating that. And I would say that in my experience, the output tends to be really close to my initial gut of what the answer might be.
That is really cool. That is really cool to hear. So when you look at your entire career, what do you think you have learned from your success?
I think what I've learned from my success, or what I've learned from my experience, is that the most important thing that a leader can do is listen. And I think it is really important to listen even while you're talking.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And so often people just wait for their turn to talk and then monologue.
Yeah.
And don't actually have an accurate understanding of how what they say is landing.
Yes.
Or being understood.
Yes.
And as a leader, it's my responsibility to make sure that everyone has transparency and clarity, that they understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to achieve it, right? Yeah. That I'm transparent about what we're trying to do and I'm clear about about why. And I don't think you can do that unless you're listening.
Yeah, no, listen, if you're trying to move this vision forward, you have to be listening to the players that are around you.
Absolutely.
You know, and I discovered that in real estate, and I say this to the agents in my team all the time, the biggest skill that we have, at least in my opinion, is exactly that. Yeah. It's listening. Because in my experience, for us, clients are telling us what they want. And they're telling us what they want, not just verbally, but they're telling us what they want in terms of their body language, in terms of their mood, in terms of just energy that they're giving you as we're walking through a place. And when we listen to that, we are able to really kind of like hone in into understanding exactly what they want for that home and the direction that they want to go with their lives. It's also an interesting question for them.
And I think that, you know, in real estate, it is so important, because oftentimes people can't articulate to you what they need and want.
Well, most of the time, most of the time they tell you they want this, and then they end up buying something completely different. You're like, you know.
Right. And you know, the most successful agents like you are able to read between the lines and read all of those cues and say, okay, well, they told me that they want a beachfront, shabby chic shack. But when we walked into this modern home that's actually 5 blocks back from the beach, their eyes lit up.
Yes.
So what does that tell me? And,
exactly.
You know, that's the way that you actually provide that expert service.
Yes, and if you're not listening to those things, you're going to spend months doing this whole thing versus making this a much more effective and pleasurable experience for the client. Yes. And so, what are you most proud of in terms of your success?
I mean, I think honestly, at the end of the day, I'm most proud of the fact that I am a mom, and my family's the most important thing in the world to me.
I love that.
And I have 2 small kids. I have a 20-month-old and an 8.5-year-old. She's very specific about the and a half.
Oh, right.
She's not 8, she's 8.5. And they, you know, the little one's obviously a baby, but the other day she's talking now. She started saying office. So she said, Mama office, Mama office. You know, and my girls see me working. They see me focused. They see me making a difference. And they see me being an engaged mom. And it doesn't mean that I'm there, you know, every single bedtime. It doesn't mean that I'm never traveling, but it means that they see that what Mama does for a living is important, and Mama being a mama is important. And even though there's never going to be a perfect balance, that I try to be engaged with both. And I think I'm role modeling that for them.
I love that. I do love that. So let's talk about that balance stuff, because there's a question, not a question, but a conversation that I have often with not just people in my team, but yes. Oh my God, balance. Yes. We actually haven't cheered. Cheers. What is your take on this idea of life-work balance?
Yeah, I think that people visualize it as a scale where the two things are you know, that the optimal outcome is that they literally are balanced.
Yes, and there's a time investment that is equal.
And there's an energy investment that's equal, and that there's an output that's equal, and that's not the way life works. I think that for me, it's getting to be at peace with the fact that sometimes my family is going to take precedence, sometimes my work is going to take precedence. On balance, my family is my priority, so if I have to choose between the two, I have to get comfortable with that choice. And I also think that it's about finding a career that allows you to integrate work and life, and that understands that you, me, anyone is more than just that role at work, that we are all whole people who have lives outside of work and who have personalities outside of work and who have, hobbies and social lives and all of these things that shouldn't be put each in a box, but that if you really integrate your work and your life in a way that allows you to feel like you are authentic and you are living your true life.
Yeah, it's a sense of fulfillment, a sense of
absolutely, and that is where both arenas can get the most out of you, and that might mean, for me, it might mean that when my daughter gets home from school at 4:30, I'm going to log off and I'm going to spend time with her doing her homework. I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going to sit down with my family, and then when the girls are asleep, I'm going to get back online, and I'm going to, tie up all of the loose ends so that my team isn't sitting around waiting for me the next morning, right? Yeah. So I think it really is about seeking out the ways that life feels more integrated.
And more meaningful. And it's, what I discovered on my end, at least, is that it's about enjoying the moments as they're presented to me. And so if I am crazy with work, I'm crazy with work. That's what I have. And that is in some ways a blessing, that in some ways a gift. And so I'm going to enjoy being this busy, and the moments in which I am not, as scared as we get in real estate about being quiet,
of course,
it's also a way of kind of like celebrating that is what's happening at that point in your life. And
I think that it is about just being present too, right? Because the reality is all of us waste a lot of time overthinking what it is that we're spending time on, right? It's human nature. Yes, it is. And so I think a lot of it is, hey, I'm busy at work, I'm doing this right now, I'm going to put my full focus and energy, and then it's going to be done, and then I'm going to move on to doing something else.
Yeah, exactly, that's what it is. So now, as there are successes, there are failures. What have you learned from those failures or those challenges in your career?
That's such a great question. I think that a couple of things that I've learned from failures. The first thing is to quickly get to the lesson and don't stew in the emotion. Easier said than done.
Yeah, it is. But it's interesting to actually say it, verbalize it.
To sort of accept that this was a failure. Call it what it is. Extract the lesson from it, and then move on and apply that lesson in life so that failure feels purposeful.
Yes.
And then I think the other thing that I've learned, and this is for me personally, is just to be kind to myself.
Isn't that like the hardest thing to do?
It's the hardest thing in the world. Yeah. It's the hardest thing in the world. And to understand that failure comes from taking risks most of the time. Hopefully it's not just coming from being, making poor decisions.
Yes, exactly. For carelessness.
Hopefully failure's coming from taking risks, and there's value in that. And to really say to myself, hey, it's part of life, and that's okay.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. It's sometimes very difficult to extract the personal, your personal, the way that you see yourself personally from those challenges in business. But like you said, it's important to be kind to yourself and to understand that it just happened, and it happened for a reason. There is something about it,
right?
And so I know you're very busy. We need to get you out of here. You have more important things to do for sure.
This is amazing.
Thank you. But what do you think is the key to success? If you have to, if you have to say it, this is how I feel that is that key, what would that be?
I think that there are a couple of things that have been critical to my success.
Yes.
One is always looking for an opportunity to make an impact and solve a problem. So throughout my career, I've never said, hey, I'm not going to go over here because that's not my job. I have always said, my job is to solve problems. My job is to make an impact. And so if I find an opportunity to solve problems or make an impact, even if it's outside of my sandbox, I'm going to try to do that. Because that's adding value, and nobody likes it when people say, hey, that's not my job. And you make an impression when you actually seek out opportunities to solve problems and make an impact. And so I think that that's been really key to my success, and that's also been really key to growing and learning, because when you do that outside of your immediate sandbox, you're naturally seeking out opportunities to grow and learn. And I think that is a big part of getting ahead, right? And I think for me, being humble has been a really important part to my success, because as soon as I got comfortable with the fact that I don't have all the answers, and as soon as I got comfortable asking questions and getting the information I need to get to the right answers, I saw myself able to make more meaningful impact. And so I think being okay with not being the loudest voice in the room, being okay with, you know, not having all of the solutions, being okay with not being right all the time.
Yes, exactly.
Ultimately resulted in, for me, having a bigger impact. And that, I think, has been really key to my success.
I assume that somebody in your position, there is, at least in your head, I don't know, an expectation that you have to be right, or that you have to have answers to things. So so it's interesting to hear you say that.
And I asked a lot of my fellow CEOs, when was the last time somebody disagreed with you? Because if you can't recall the last time somebody disagreed with you, you've got a problem in your organization, because you're definitely not right all the time. So you have to be cultivating those feedback loops and that honesty within your organization to make sure that people are keeping you humble and making sure that the answers that you're coming up with are actually the right ones to move the organization forward.
So you can make a difference on what you're doing. Kamini, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. So, salud.
Cheers.
Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Please make sure that you like, comment, share, and follow. We'll see you in the next episode. Salud.